I'm just guessing you've had a busy week.
This story is huge.
Is blowing our minds. Tell us about the DEA investigation
Yeah.
into Jeffrey Epstein a few years ago.
So I spent it was in 2015. So I spent about a month on this. And in January, when the Justice Department released all of these Epstein files, millions of pages, there was a document, a few documents that caught my eye. And it was heavily redacted, but it showed that there was an investigation into illegitimate wire transfers involving illicit drug and or prostitution in the U.S. Virgin Islands and New York City. So this document was essentially showing how the DEA was working with an organized crime drug enforcement task force out of the DOJ. And I basically spent the past month understanding what was behind these redactions. The operation was called Operation Chain Reaction. And this part that involves Jeffrey Epstein and 12 other individuals and 2 businesses that we revealed were named as part of this investigation. What we ultimately found out is that off of a tip from an informant, the DEA suspected Jeffrey Epstein and others of being involved in the funding and distribution of ketamine, ecstasy, and other methamphetamines. And again, it grew out of this larger investigation. And what was also stood out in this document was after Jeffrey Epstein was released in 2009, there were multiple law enforcement agencies that were following his every move, more or less. They were tracking him, following his money, going into the National Crime Information Center database and trying to get some background on him. We were able to see how the Secret Service White House division in August 2014 did a search on Jeffrey Epstein for background information. Now, you'd only do that if you're coming into contact with a Secret Service protectee, like the president or a protected.
What year was that, Jason?
That was in August 2014.
So who could have? I mean, I don't want you to speculate, but who was in the Obama administration? That was during the Obama administration. But there are a lot of people who are protected by Secret Service. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people protected by Secret Service, but I mean, a Secret Service protectee when you have the White House division, that's different. Yeah. So
maybe a former president.
It could be a former president, but that's a different. Again, that's a little different.
Okay.
Because it's a different division. So we did try to uncover what that was all about. And essentially what the Secret Service was, ultimately looking at. But that more reporting will be revealed there. But this was just an unbelievable investigation. And fortunately, because not all the files have been released by DOJ, it remains to be seen how it ultimately shook out, how it ended. What we do know is that none of the individuals, which includes Jeffrey Epstein's brother, his accountants, his lawyers, and there were women on there as well whose names we withheld because it's unclear whether they're victims. None of them were charged. So it remains to be seen exactly what happened here.
Jason, what blows my mind again, thanks to your reporting, is just a reminder of how much scrutiny Jeffrey Epstein was under by so many, in this case, government agencies and entities for years and a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, that really, really stood out to me. Even the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service, they were looking at, they had an investigation that seemed to center around non-immigrant visas. Now, the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service also does investigate transnational crime. And that's the key here. this was not a small investigation involving, just Jeffrey Epstein and one agency. This was a task force investigation, the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Forces, which linked up with the DEA to conduct this far-reaching investigation. And like I said, it grew out of one that started in 2010 into organized crime, but then ended up on Jeffrey Epstein.
Hey, Jason, just got about 45 seconds left here. Does it feel like they had a lot there and then they dropped the ball, or TBD? Because as you said, that there's still missing case files that have not yet been released.
Yeah, TBD on that one. I mean, it's starting to look like it may have informed the 2019 prosecution, but I'll come back at you with additional reporting on that, Carol.
All right. And maybe next time we could talk to you about that latest DOJ drop.
I went through all of them, by the way. I went through everything that they just released.
Is there anything we need to know real quickly?
There are some interesting emails in there, more from Leon Black. There's a prosecution memo. There's a document there that after Epstein died, they were looking to bring a prosecution against a corporation. Looks like one that was associated with Epstein, but there's some interesting new details there.
All right.